to my lecture, An Introduction to C Media, and I hope that you guys learned a thing or two from this. Okay, so a little about me first. Some of you might know me as Quacksonxhollander on Instagram. I do a lot of C novels cosplays, as you can see. Last few years, C Media has been my biggest special interest, and the reason why I'm having this lecture is because C Media has become quite popular. However, some find it difficult to get into it, so I'm here to make it easy. And a little disclaimer before we start. I'm not an expert. I haven't watched and read everything that's out there, but of course I've done my research, and if I do say something wrong, feel free to correct me. Okay, I'm just going to wait for those people to sit down first. Then we can continue. There's more like chairs in the front, and if not, you can move them back if it's a bit hard to see. Okay, so what will this lecture contain? First of all, I will go through what C Media is and also like things to be aware of, Chinese genres, terms, names, and honorifics, where to find things, authors to check out, and how to consume C Media as a Western viewer. And in general, I will have a focus on queer media because I'm very biased, because I'm kind of but yeah, ask questions at any point, and also feel free to take photos of the slides since there will be lots of info and it will be hard to remember. And last of all, I have a tendency to talk really quickly, so let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay, so what is C Media? C Media basically means Chinese media, but it refers more specifically to Chinese fictional media and content. And C Media comes in many different forms and adaptations. And I'm going to start up with showing some examples. First up is Chinese television drama, or C-drama as it's more commonly called. There's a huge variety of C-dramas out there with all types of genres and settings. In the West, I'd say C-dramas are mostly known for their period dramas. And it's basically those Chinese dramas where they wear those beautiful long robes all the time. Yeah. But in general, fantasy romance is actually the most popular genre. And like small facts to know about C-dramas, like beforehand. When it comes to C-dramas, they're usually really long. Like 30 to 50 episodes is like very common. So sit down and settle because you're in for a ride. And another fact is that almost all dramas are dubbed by voice actors, and there's two reasons why. One is because of poor audio quality during filming, and second is to avoid dialects because they won't like standard Beijing dialects. I see so many people. Okay, but while we're talking about C-dramas, there's one thing that you will notice, especially with like more supernatural fantasy dramas. There's a big difference to Western media when it comes to special effects. Like, just be aware that you shouldn't expect Marvel level of special effects, or else it can ruin the experience a little bit. Like, of course, there's many amazing C-dramas with cool special effects too, but obviously the bad ones stick out just a little bit more. So the message of this is don't let it scare you away from trying C-dramas, because I've seen some people not giving it a chance because of it. And there's a lot more to the plot than just the special effects. And also, there's a really positive side with the special effects, and that is, wait, how do I do this? Yeah, it gives you a break from crying. So if you do like more fights, like cool stuff, and don't like how the dramas do it, then you might like what comes up next. And that is Chinese animation. I love that one. And yeah, it's called donghua. I will talk more about like Chinese terms later. But yeah, a commonly used type of animation in donghua is obviously 2D animation, as seen above, which looks like your standard anime, like anime art style kind of. But not only is 2D animation common with the Chinese animation, we also have 3D CGI, which is actually more common than 2D donghua. And I've had people tell me that 3D animation, like a 3D animation kind of looks like Barbie animation from the early 2000s. And of course, that's not for everyone, but I do think that when it comes to C media or just stuff you're not used to, give it a chance before judging it. because you might miss out on something really good. Okay, then over to Chinese comics called manhwa. And different to mangas, they usually come with color.
Oh, wow.
And you also read from left to right, so basically the same as you do in the West. And manhwas won't really be my main focus in this lecture, but the reason why I'm mentioning them is because a lot of C media will come with several adaptations, and manhwas are one of the most common adaptations. So like for example, a Chinese novel might get like a drama adaptation, a donghua adaptation, and maybe a manhwa adaptation, and more. Okay, and then the last form of media I will talk about is Chinese novels, and they're usually referred to as C novels. The C novels I'm going to talk about are web novels, which are basically digital books, and that's because that's what's like really popular in China right now. And since these authors can make longer stories without being limited by having to be a few hundred pages, many web novels are pretty long, really long. Okay, and another thing special about web novels is that authors have the chance to add something called extra chapters. And therefore most web novels come with extra chapters, and they come after the main plot is done. And they can contain all types of stuff. It can be like posts, canon content, alternative universe, it can be backstory, it can be anything. And these extras can either heal all the wounds in your heart that the story has created, or throw you into the deepest pit of hell, all depending on what the author wants. And now, I know I'm talking about digital novels, and some of you might not be a fan of reading digitally. Then I have good news for you. Many Chinese web novels have been licensed and been made into physical English books. And when they are published, they're usually like divided into many, many volumes. And the reason why that is done is because if the entire novel was put into one volume, then these books would be gigantic. But keep in mind, many Chinese web novels are like 300,000 to over 1 million words long. And that's why the English physical translations can be around 3 to 11 volumes long. And because of that, I'm already giving all my condolences to your wallets and your bank accounts. Some of you will already get loose. Okay, so when we're talking about all these forms of C media, we also need to talk about which terms we're supposed to use. And you heard me mentioning some of them on the previous slides. And first we have donghua. In Chinese, it basically means animation. But when it's used outside of China, it refers specifically to all kinds of Chinese or Taiwanese animation. And some think anime is a synonym to the word donghua, but anime is very specifically referring to Japanese animation. Donghua is Chinese animation, so there's a difference. So don't use the term anime, please. Next we have manhwa, and like the same concept as the term donghua, manhwa refers to comics that have been published in China. And once again, the term manga is not a synonym since it refers to Japanese comics and not Chinese. Yeah, and last we have C-drama and C-novel, and I feel like these are kind of self-explanatory. You just put a C in front of it, in the same way you put like a K in front of K-drama. It just refers to the origin country, C for Chinese. Okay, so some of you may be wondering, why use these terms? Isn't it just easier to use the Japanese terms you're like already so familiar with? And there's several good answers for why. But the most important one is using the right terms is actually just about giving credit where it's due. C media is often heavily rooted in Chinese culture, mythology, and beliefs. It's so relevant to the plot, to the drama, to the world building, and it's simply relevant to everything. So many of these stories couldn't exist without the influence from Chinese culture. And not using the right term can be therefore seen as not recognizing where the media is from, which can again be seen as disrespectful. And that's because you're not allowing C media to be recognized as Chinese, but instead giving credit to someone else. Okay, and like to put it in perspective for you people, let's say a Norwegian thing is labeled as something Swedish. Norwegian people would become enraged. Like, how dare you say ostehøvel is Swedish? It is Norwegian from Norway. So, the reason why some of us react like that is because we feel wronged. And someone labeling something that's yours as someone else's work, in general, just sucks. But compared with my example, it is important to point out that China is often very stigmatized and looked down upon, and I think that more appreciation of Chinese culture and the media it produces can cause less xenophobia and less prejudices. And that's why using the right terms is actually important. And with all of that laid out, my final recommendation is use the right Chinese terms. However, I know some people struggle with new words, and there's no shame in that. And if that's the case, then using the English terms is just as good. And like these words are already in your vocabulary, like comic, animation. Just put the word Chinese in front of it, and there you have it. Yes. Any questions? Okay, great. Okay, now over to something different, which is Chinese genres. Because C Media obviously has genres that you might not be familiar with. And one of them is wuxia, which literally means martial heroes. Wuxia is like actually one of China's oldest literary genres. And this genre is basically about heroes that are usually martial artists fighting evil and injustice. And a trait to kind of recognize wuxia is that these stories usually have little to nothing of the supernatural stuff and has instead focused on things like fighting for justice. And then we have xianxia, or like directly translated to immortal heroes. If you see that wuxia is low fantasy, then xianxia is high fantasy. Xianxia is based on Chinese mythology and is heavily influenced by Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianistic views. And it usually has things like gods and spirits and demons and ghosts. And because of that, some people basically call it Chinese fantasy. However, it is important to note that for a story to be part of the xianxia genre, the story has to have some form of pursuit of immortality and cultivation in it. And if it doesn't, then it's not xianxia. And next, we have a genre named shenhun, and that translates to mysterious fantasy. And it's more about heroes in a fantasy world. And it's a broad genre that remixes Chinese mythology with elements and settings from Western influence. And shenhun has similarities to xianxia on a surface level, but a way to difference them is to look for Taoism elements. Like xianxia is heavily inspired by Taoism and pursuit of immortality, while shenhun isn't. Shenhun, I would say it's like more proper fantasy. And last one, we have transmigration. And I would say it's a genre that is also quite popular in not just China, but the entirety of East Asia. And it's a genre where a person's soul is transferred into another body, often into an entirely different world. And it's kind of similar to the Japanese genre isekai, but transmigration also involves the character being removed from their original body, while a character in an isekai story may hold on to their original body. Any questions? Taoism. I actually added a note for this. I was expecting it. Taoism is like basically thinking about that like Taoists, they believe in spiritual immortality and like that the universe is connected and spiritual energy is connected. So you know, in most like xianxia stories, you will see them like talking about spiritual energy and being one with the nature, being one with the stuff around you. It's like a very bad explanation. Sorry, I should have prepared a better one. But just if they talk a lot about their surroundings and nature, it's like clear spiritual energy and stuff, and also immortality. And now over to the genres that didn't give me a headache when I tried to find basic information about them. First we have danmei, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And it directly translates to indulging in beauty. And it's basically Chinese biao. Last we have he, and it directly translates to lilies. And it's basically Chinese jiao. So many gates, basically. Okay, so where's my... Oh, there, okay. So when we're talking about genres, I obviously got to talk about cultivation. Cultivation is something that you'll find in xianxia stories, and cultivation is a Taoist concept that focuses on people called cultivators trying to expand their lifespan and trying to gain some form of supernatural powers, through training a set of martial arts, and also through cultivating qi. And qi is the energy in all living beings. It's basically life force, and can be both good qi and evil qi. And in some cases, qi is referred to as spiritual energy. And cultivators, they absorb qi, usually from the natural world, and they use that energy to train and improve their skills. And furthermore, to work on this qi, or just to cultivate in general, many cultivators join a cultivation sect, or a clan, to do so. A cultivation sect is basically an organization of people who are united by their dedication to practice a specific method or signature style of cultivation. And in a sect, there's usually one leader who have been chosen by the previous one. And an important thing to note is that in a sect, there's usually no blood relations between the members, guys. No! None, okay? And cultivation clans, on the other hand, are different. A clan is people related by blood. So a cultivation clan is a large blood-related family that trains and teaches cultivation. Cultivation clans are led by family elders, which means that only blood-related family members can be leaders. However, like in some stories, disciples can join the clan regardless of blood relations, but I think it just depends on the story. But yeah, they can't lead the clan because it's so much focused on blood relations. Any questions? Of course. Okay, now over to a more serious topic, which is extremely relevant to C media. Censorship. Because what is it actually? Censorship is something that affects all forms of C media, but especially everything that's on television. And it's basically censoring of content that is seen as problematic, extreme violence, or seen as something politically wrong. And something that's also affected is queer content, because it has been labeled as pornographic. Because there's obviously nothing more pornographic than two men holding hands. But yes, because of this, queer content can't be shown explicitly and has to be censored. And as a result, we've gotten many queer-coded dramas and donghwas. Furthermore, censorship doesn't only affect television, it also affects manhwas. But manhwas, they can be clearly queer, but things like kisses and more explicit content is usually what's being censored. And novels are sometimes censored too, but that's more related to the authors and what the contract says and whether they're publishing their books. And it usually only limits more explicit things. But just now, I mentioned how censorship has given us many amazing queer-coded dramas and donghwas, and because of that, I've seen people, especially in the Western anime fan base, praise these censored adaptations for making the queer stories more pure, since they've taken away everything that's explicitly romantic. And some people don't take into mind that it's extremely damaging, because praising media for being censored is praising lack of freedom of speech and lack of right for queer people to exist. And queer people shouldn't have to fit into the box of having to be pure and hiding their sexuality to be allowed to exist in real life or in media. And therefore, praising the censorship and how it affects queer media is basically praising queer people's lack of right to exist unapologetically. And you're fully allowed to consume the content you want. For example, if the queer content is more explicit or not. But your preferences shouldn't be the same as denying other types of media or content to exist. Yes, just please be mindful of that. Now over to something completely different again. Names, honorifics, and words. And this is basically the new fans' biggest enemy. It seems like every character has endless of names. Like, what do you mean this one guy is called Lao Ji, Lan Zhan, Lan Xiong, Han Wenjun, and Lan Erge? Same guy. Like, what does that stuff even mean? And therefore, I will try to walk you guys through it. And like, this will be a lot of information, so buckle up and maybe get your camera ready too. First of all, how does names in China work? In the West, the given name comes first and then the surname after, as you can see above. Ignore that, it's Donald Trump, it's the best photo I could find, okay? However, in China, the surname or the family name that it's also called, actually comes first. Then comes the given name. So, for example, Donald Trump's name in China wouldn't be Donald Trump. It would actually be Trump Donald. It's basically flipped around. So just remember, surname goes first in China, same as in Japan. Okay, now we're to something most people struggle with when they're new to C media, with especially ancient settings. You'll often notice that some people have several names, and the surname is the same as before in both the names, but their given name can be different. And this is what we call for birth names and courtesy names. Birth name is the name that you're given at birth, and it's more like your personal name that the people who are like closest to you use. While a courtesy name is the name someone's given when they come of age. And traditionally, these names are given at the age of 20, but authors often give them a little bit earlier for convenient reasons. An example of how this works is Wei Ying from Foredrag, the guy in Quacksonxhollander. He was given the birth name Wei Ying, but later got the courtesy name Wu Xian. And that's why he has the two names, Wei Ying and Wu Xian. And now over to how they're used in a more practical setting. A courtesy name can be used by everyone since the name has more respect to it, but it's not the same with birth. If you have a courtesy name, being called by your birth name can often be seen as like disrespectful since it's a very personal name, and which is why you'll usually only hear the birth name being used by the person themselves, by elders, or people the person has a really close relationship with, like family, friends, or their lover. And at last, I'm going to mention titles. The titles are often given by others out of respect or out of fear, and they refer to their official position or maybe a big good deed that they've done. And it's basically like a name that you earn. Questions? Okay, great. Okay, this slide might get a bit hectic. I'm not expecting people to remember this, but I'm just mentioning it since you'll definitely come across what I call Chinese nicknames. These nicknames take a part of the person's name or an honorific, then add something to it either at the start or at the end. And some of the things that are added that you'll come across is, first of all, xiao. Xiao means little in Chinese, and it's therefore used to refer to someone younger or youngest. And it's always used as a prefix, and a prefix means that you add it before you say the name. Like for example, you add the honorific, you add the prefix xiao to the honorific juju, and then you get xiaojiu. And next we have da, which means big. And it's therefore used to refer to someone older or oldest, and it's always used as a prefix too. Like for example, you add da to the honorific gogo, and then you get da ge. And these prefixes are used to refer to how old someone are compared to someone else, and this is also done with numbers sometimes. Furthermore, we have a. Yeah, you heard me, a, just the letter a. It's always used as a prefix in front of names, and it's used to be like very friendly or affectionate. And basically they use the last part of a person's name and then they put a in front of it. For example, if you have the name Moran and you take away the start and add a, then you get Aran. Next we have Ar, which means son or child. Ar is used very like affectionately, but it's not always used for children, even if the definition makes you think so. It can actually be used on a partner or a sibling. And it can be used as a suffix, which means you add it at the end of the name. Like for example, the name Bing Xian. You take away the start of the name and then you add ar at the end and get Xian Ar. And also, at last, saying a character's given name twice is also a very affectionate form of nickname to give family and partners. For example, Lan Zhan becoming Zhan Zhan. So yeah, lots of nicknames that you will come across. Oh, I will explain Gogo on the next slide. But Juju basically means uncle. So like, for example, if you have several uncles, you will call the youngest one for Xiaoju and the eldest one for Daju because you have several ones, right? And you want to like put them in order of age. It's very common in China. I do that too. Yes, Gogo is coming up on the next slide. Then you use numbers. And especially like, yeah, you use numbers or it depends a bit. And yes, Just now, on the last slide, I used the honorific go, but I was actually using that as a transition, so you read ahead. Okay. Which brings me to my next topic, family honorifics. It's not an actual term, but it's basically just honorifics that have something to do with family. And the most important ones to remember is the ones related to siblings. And first of all, we have Mei Mei, which is younger sister, Jie Jie, which means elder sister, Di, which means younger brother, and Ge, which means older brother. And they can be used alone with the part of a name or a prefix. For example, if you have a younger brother with the name Huang Cheng, then you can just call him for Cheng Di. And also a very important thing to point out is that these honorifics are often used on family, but not always. Siblings honorifics are very often used as a respectful way of referring to other people, and it can be like used on friends, on strangers, on your neighbor, or even a lover. Like you guys might be familiar with the word oppa, which is Korean for older brother, or onisa, which is Japanese for older brother, and it works the same as gaga. It's not always used on a sibling. And like referring to elders as auntie and uncle to be respectful is also like an example of this. But I didn't want to add too many words to remember, especially since the next slide might give you guys a major headache. Okay, I know this seems like a lot, but you guys are actually already familiar with some of this. You have Di from Didi and Mei from Mei from the last slides, but now with the Shu before it. And Shu basically means teacher or master. So when it's used at the start of an honorific, it usually means that you and another person have some form of relationship because you were taught by the same master, or because you have some form of relation because of your master. And once again, not related by blood, guys. I've seen so much weird stuff in that, okay? Okay, you'll come across this especially a lot in C medias with sects. Okay, questions? The reason why Hua Cheng in Tingwen Sufu called Xielian for Gogo is because Xielian is older and it's respectful. So it's like, I don't know, it's like calling someone bro, kind of, but more respectful. I don't know. So yeah, he's older, so that's why he calls him that. Any more questions?
Kan du bare gjenta de spørsmålene som ble stilt til deg? For det er ikke alltid
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. The question right now was why Xielian from Tingwen Sufu is referred to as Gogo by Hua Cheng, his love interest. Okay. And now that I've fried your brains with all these names and honorifics, you might be a bit more prepared for C media. Maybe not. But some of you, after getting into these stories, want to talk about them. But then it hits you. How do I even refer to the characters? Okay, earlier I talked about name order, and when it comes to referring to characters, you will use the same order. Surname first, and then give a name. Same as it's written in the book or said in the show or whatever. But over to something that might sound a bit weird, which is syllables, or stavelse på norsk. Chinese people love several syllables, and that's because most Chinese words are 2 syllables or more. And because of that, it feels natural to say several syllables, especially in Chinese. And this also applies for how you will say names. This is why you usually don't refer to characters by a 1-syllable name. Like, you wouldn't call Shi Qingxian for just Shu. It just sounds wrong, and it's not a big issue, but it's just a heads up for non-Chinese people. It sounds extremely strange, guys. But personally, I recommend to use the entire name, aka their birth name or their courtesy name. And you can also just use their given name as long as it's 2 syllables. Or you can also use some form of nickname if you want to. And if you do struggle with names, using titles, if they have one, is also very smart. For example, Shi Qingxian from Heaven Official's Blessing is often just referred to as the Wingmaster because no one is able to say the name. But yeah, also just don't worry that much about pronunciation, just try your best. Most people that are like Chinese will get that it's difficult, and no one's like coming for your neck unless you're making fun of the names or the language, then I will actually personally come and hunt you down myself. Don't make fun of Chinese names or the Chinese language, guys, please. Okay, questions? They don't usually change. No, in China they're like, you get this title, then you stay with that one. I've never come across it, yeah. I've never come across that. You usually get one title and one courtesy name and then it ends at that. Okay, my biggest tips, if you want to learn how to say Chinese names, what I would do, first of all, many Chinese characters, they usually have like a wiki page or something, and then I would copy the name Chinese and put it in Google Translate. Yeah, and then it's accurate usually, and then you just put on the sound, and then you just repeat it. That's what I usually do if I feel like, how do I say this thing? Because tones in Chinese are like different. So yeah, Google Translate is actually my biggest recommendations for learning pronunciation, or pronunciation guides, which can be sometimes found in the book or online, if it's more popular. Okay, no more questions? Great. And last, when it comes to names, I'm going to talk about something my friends refer to as the keyboard smash. When I first entered my first C-media fandom, I remember being so confused. Because who the hell is WWX? Who is LWJ? I was so lost. But basically what it is first names, but just shortened down to a few letters. It's like, I don't remember the English name. And each letter, basically, each letter is supposed to represent a syllable in the character's name. Like, for example, Wei Wu Xian, becoming WWX. And this is mostly done with characters with longer names, and it's done to save time. And after having to write down these long names a few times, you'll get why people do this. Okay, and now over to where to find and watch things. First of all, I recommend finding recommendations online, on social medias like TikTok and Twitter. There's like a million recommendations online. If you just search up Donghua recommendations, C-drama recommendations. However, I'm also going to give some recommendations soon. And most dramas can be found on, like to watch, can be found on platforms like YouTube, WeTV, and Viki. Viki has apparently fan-translated subtitles and is therefore one of the best options. I also personally really like using YouTube. And there's also Youku, Ichi, and Netflix, but Netflix doesn't really have much, especially not in Norway. And Ichi has machine-translated subtitles, so it can be a bit weird. Okay, and for Donghua, YouTube, WeTV, and Crunchyroll are some of the platforms you can use. However, my biggest recommendation is illegal anime websites. Don't let anyone know I said this. It's not my fault, there's no better options. Okay, and yes, I'm going to talk about that now. It's exciting now. I'm one step ahead of all of you guys. I know what you guys want to know. Okay, where do you find novels? Okay, so when it comes to recommendations, I will be giving some on the next slides. And outside of that, you can find recommendations online, from Twitter recommendation threads, or TikToks, or cards. For example, there's many cards that specifically have Danmei novel or Baika novel recommendations, or recommendations for other specific genres. I've seen these recommendation threads for like sci-fi books or like school setting, and all types of stuff on Twitter. Yeah, some C novels have been licensed and can therefore be like found physically in bookstores like Outland, Ark, and Lune, and also other like online bookstores. But most novels are digital and are fan translated. And some of these fan translations can be read on websites, some on EPUBs, and some on Google Documents. But also a little heads up, some fan translations are free while others cost money, but usually like very little money, it's not much. And the way to find these translations are either through searching up the book online or like on Google, or through, for example, the website Novel Updates. Novel Updates can also help with like basic information and show if the translation is finished or not. And another thing that is extremely helpful with translations that I just mentioned now is cards. I prefer using this one. In general, cards are like very helpful with finding basic information about the books, and also about adaptations and trigger warnings and everything that you honestly need. And last, if you want a personal guide with like recommendations and stuff, I mean, always feel free to contact me. I am all my friends' personal C-media dealer. Victor. Okay, authors to look for, aka the part where I yap about everything I want to recommend, because I'm here to spread an agenda after all. I will recommend authors and their works in the next few slides, and also like talk about their genres and adaptations to check out. And it's also just going to be Danmei and Manga authors, because I'm the biggest talker ever. I only read queer books. Yeah. Okay, so the one I'm starting up with is obviously MXTX, or 魔像同修, since she's like the most known Danmei author. I'd say MXTX is the absolute best place to start up if you want to get into Danmei, because the fandoms are so big and there's so many adaptations, and the stories are also great. And all of her 3 novels have been licensed, so you can find her books in like local stores. And her first book is Gun Villain Self-Saving System. And the genres for this book is like transmigration and xianxia. But personally, I wouldn't start up with this one. It's a bit strange, but it's good, okay? But the ones I recommend starting up with when getting into Danmei is 武道祖师. I see some fans here. Yeah, it's also called the Grandmaster of Demonical Division in English. And it's basically about the first victim of cancel culture, getting canceled for being a necromancer, and then he's killed, but later unlucky enough to be forced back to life. Not a lucky guy. The genres for this book is like xianxia and mystery, and it literally has all the adaptations possible, and they're all finished. And then we have, or like furthermore, I also recommend starting up with Tianwen Zifu, or Heaven vs. Blessing, as it's also called. I think it's MXTX's most popular book lately. It's very popular. And it's basically about a god who gets fired twice, then he gets employed again. But after he's re-employed, during his missions, he somehow befriends the Ghost King himself, aka Heaven's biggest enemy. I don't think they're so happy about that. But yeah, genres for this book is like xianxia, adventure, and action. And when it comes to adaptations, there's many great adaptations to check out. I don't think any of them is finished though. But it has a donghua, an audio drama, a manhua, and an upcoming drama. I hope. Next we have Please Don't Laugh. Also referred to as PBL. It's quite an interesting author's name, considering the fact that she loves to write gut-crunching lesbian slow burns that for a fact did not make me laugh. She's like my favorite author of all time, and she has written many Baihe novels, but only 3 are fully translated to English, and they're all free online, guys. Jingwei Qingshang, also called Clear and Muddy Loss of Love, is the most popular one, and it's also the one that I recommend the most. It's basically about a lesbian prince trying to get revenge for her people, and yeah, basically she ends up in the process she ends up falling in love with her biggest enemy's daughter. And the genres for this book is like politics, drama, revenge, and slow burn. this book ruined me. It took my soul through a meat grinder, and I will never recover from it. It's my favorite book ever. Anyway, it has been licensed, and it has an audio drama and an upcoming donghua. And furthermore, some honorable PBL book mentions. First of all, we have Female General and Elvis Princess, which has also been licensed to English, and it's basically about lesbian mom. And last, we have Foredrag, or matrilocal marriage, and it's about time traveling and women's rights in alternative ancient China. But yeah, PDL is like the only Baiha author I will mention, because there's honestly no other well-known Baiha author which has like an active fandom, but there's still many Baihas out there. You just have to search really good. Next, we have Priest, another famous author who has like over 20 books. She doesn't even remember her own characters because she has written so much. But yeah, I will only mention some and pretty vaguely because there's so many. In general, Priest writes a lot of wuxia and xianxia, but also like modern and urban fantasy. And most of her books are danmei books, but some aren't actually. And when it comes to licensed works, Guardian, Star of Chaos, and Yuya have been licensed. And if you're like really interested in xianxia, Yuya is like the book I'd recommend the most. This is my favorite Priest book. And if you want to cry your eyes out or found family in tragic side gaze, this book is for you. Okay, one more. Derailment. Thank you. Okay, so one more adaptation, actually. Okay. And over to adaptations. And when it comes to finished live actions, we have Word of Honor, Guardian, Legend of Fae, and Thank you. And we also have a Taiwanese live action called Unknown, and it's uncensored because it's Taiwanese. But my biggest strong recommendation is definitely Word of Honor, biased. It's a great wuxia drama with lots of politics, found family, and romance. And when it comes to donghua, like there's been many adaptations that have been announced, but we haven't heard from any of them in years. I guess censorship is holding them locked in a closet or something. Then we have Musu Li. She's a great author with many great works that have very funny character dynamics, in my opinion. My favorite book by her is Momo, also called A Certain Someone, and it's a modern novel to check out if you're more into that. And the book is basically about like school life, coming of age, and two boys healing from their past traumas and also learn to love each other in a society that's against them doing so. And when it comes to adaptations, it has an audio drama and a Taiwanese drama coming out in 2 weeks. And furthermore, if you want to check out some 玄幻, I check out Copper Coins. It's basically about a paralyzed dragon and a monk with amnesia trying to solve a mystery related to their situation. And yes, the guy's bald. Get over it. Yeah, and yeah, it has a manhwa and an audio drama. Really good. And then we have Meat Bun Doesn't Eat Meat, my queen, or Meat Bun, as she's also called. And she's one of the most famous danmei authors, and many check out her books after MXTX books. But the reason why I'm talking about her last is because of something extremely important. You cannot talk about Meat Bun or C novels in general without talking about trigger warnings and age ratings. Please, guys. Like, extremely many C novels are 17 plus, or even rated as mature, and it's for a very good reason. And many of these books contain very mature, dark, and triggering themes, and therefore, no matter what you want to check out, for the love of God, search up trigger warnings beforehand. Also, maybe just the plot of these books, for that matter. I'm saying this for everyone's own good. And with especially Meat Bun books, if you know AU3 language, her books are very dub, do not eat. So read the trigger warnings. Meat Bun's books are rated as mature, and for a reason. so her books are not for everyone. But even so, she's like a really great author with tragic but amazing books. So of course I gotta talk about her. I love her very much. And if you're about to start a meatball novel and someone tells you, good luck, it's not said to be nice. It's a genuine warning. Just know I'm not paying anyone's therapy bill for recommending meatball books. I already gotta pay for my own. And more practical info, all of her 3 novels have been licensed to English. And her most popular book, and probably the one I recommend to check out first, is Arha, or The Husky and His White Cachedoo. And it's basically about, oh my god, my nose jumped there. It's basically about a tyrant emperor dying, but instead of going to hell, he's sent back to when he was 16, and as a consequence, he ends up learning the secrets of his past life. And the genres for this book is like xianxia, drama, and tragedy. I think it has a fan audio drama, I'm not sure, but it has a manhwa and an upcoming drama called Immortality. But I guess you have to become immortal if you want to watch it, because it seems like they have no plans of releasing it anytime soon. Because of censorship, of course. Then we have You, or Remnants of Filth, that it's also called. This book takes place in the same universe as Arha, but it's like far into the past. And the genres for this book is like xianxia, drama, and action. And this book threw me into the deepest and most painful pit of hell, and it's definitely one of my favorite books too. And last, we have Bing Andan, or also called Case File Companion. I have a really complicated relationship with this book. But yeah, it's sci-fi, psychological, and mystery. And please read this book with extreme caution. This is a warning. This book is not for everyone, okay? And last, we have some honorable mentions. When it comes to donghwas, we have 1,000 Autumns by Meng Qixi, which is a very popular wuxia donghua. And then we have Legend of Exorcism by Fei Tian Yexiang, which is a very popular xianhuan donghua. So I'd recommend checking out both as well as the authors, because both of the authors, when I can speak, both of the authors have several licensed books. I think Meng Qixi, she has like 2 licensed books, and Fei Tian Yexiang, he has like 3 licensed books. Anyway, the donghua I actually recommend the most. You guys might have heard me during the opening show, but it's an original donghua, and I cannot have a whole lecture about C media without recommending Link Click, because it's so good. Okay, it's like time travel, supernatural, mysteries. It's 2 seasons, and they're incredible. Both sub and dub. You can have it in the background while you're working for cosplays, guys. Okay, and when it comes to C-dramas, of course I gotta recommend Nirvana and Fire. It's like one of the most famous historical dramas in China, and it's so good. And it's like, what's the name again? It's, what's a one like really popular like drama in the West that's like Game of Thrones? It's like Game of Thrones kind of. I haven't even watched Game of Thrones, but I've heard people say it's like that. Lots of scheming in politics, very, very good. And then after that, I gotta recommend Till the End of the Moon. It's a great fantasy, xianxia, and romance, really good. And at last, I recommend Couple of Mirrors, because it's an amazing bi-club C-drama. And last, at the complete end here, I just gotta recommend Qiang Jin Jiu by Tang Jiuqin. In English, it's called The Ballad of Sword and Wine. It's got quite heavy politics, so please don't start off with this book. You will be extremely confused. But still, the book is extremely popular, and for a very good reason. I finished it recently, and it's genuinely one of the best books I've ever read. And it has been licensed, by the way. Okay, now that we're done with the millions of recommendations I have, you guys are probably exhausted from listening. I hear you, Juliana, I hear you. But I have one last thing I want to talk about. How to consume C media as a Western viewer. First of all, keep in mind that C media is made by Chinese people for Chinese people. So there are a lot of cultural elements you might not understand, and this can be everything from what they wear to what they say or what they do. And when it comes to that, I think it's really important to try and understand and not just immediately judge it from a Western view. And don't try to speak over Chinese people if they try to educate you on certain topics. Not only that, but please just be respectful and don't make fun of the culture, or the language, or names, and instead just appreciate it. I feel like this is a good one. And furthermore, since C media is from another culture, I think it's also important to acknowledge that things such as morals and progressiveness might be a bit different from the West. And this is not to say you cannot criticize certain aspects of C media. There are definitely flaws and things to comment on that I could gladly discuss and criticize myself again. What I'm saying is, just make sure you don't criticize things carelessly and take into mind cultural differences and how some countries might be less progressive on certain topics because there's simply been no attention around them. But all in all, be respectful, don't talk over Chinese voices, and don't consume C media through the eyes of the Western world. Or try at least. I know it's very hard. Okay, I hope I haven't completely fried your brains and that you at least learned a thing or two, or else it has just been me info dumping for an entire hour. But yes, if you do have any questions, you can ask me now, you can ask me later. You can, for example, contact me on Instagram. I don't bite, so feel free to DM me there if there's anything. Also, if anyone's interested in me sharing the presentation, just let me know and I can share the link. And also, I'm gonna try to post a video of the entire lecture and link it in my Instagram bio or something. But I'm gonna try. That's the key word. But at last, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming to my lecture. I hope you guys learned something. Yes.